Clara Whitmore had always been different from the other kids in her wealthy neighborhood. While most of her peers obsessed over designer clothes and social events, Clara found herself drawn to the quiet corners of the world, the places where life wasn't so polished or perfect. Every day after school, she would walk through the park near her home, watching the world go by. One chilly autumn afternoon, as golden leaves swirled around her feet, Clara noticed someone sitting on a bench near the edge of the park. A boy about her age, his clothes tattered and his face gaunt. He was staring at the ground, clutching an empty cup. Something about him made Clara pause. "Hi," she said softly, approaching cautiously. "Are you okay?" The boy looked up, startled. His eyes were tired, but there was a flicker of defiance in them. "I'm fine," he muttered, though it was clear he wasn't. Clara hesitated, then pulled a sandwich out of her bag. She'd packed 2 that morning, planning to eat one later. "Here," she said, holding it out. "You look like you could use this more than I can." The boy stared at the sandwich for a long moment before taking it. "Thanks," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. "I'm Clara," she offered with a small smile. "Ethan," he replied quietly. From that day forward, Clara made it a point to bring Ethan food every afternoon. Sometimes it was a sandwich, other times leftovers from dinner or snacks she'd saved from lunch. At first, Ethan was wary. No one had ever shown him such consistent kindness, but over time he began to trust her. "You don't have to do this, you know," he said one day as she handed him a warm thermos of soup. "Yes, I do," Clara replied simply. "Everyone deserves to eat." Her words stuck with Ethan long after she left. For years, he'd felt invisible, like no one cared whether he lived or died. But Clara's daily visits reminded him that he mattered, that there was still good in the world. What Clara didn't realize was that her simple act of kindness was planting a seed in Ethan's heart. Watching her selflessness day after day gave him hope, not just for survival, but for a future beyond the streets. One evening, as they sat together on the bench sharing a bag of chips, Ethan asked, "Why are you so nice to me? You don't even know me." Clara shrugged. "Because everyone deserves a little kindness. Besides, maybe someday you'll pay it forward." Ethan didn't respond, but her words stayed with him. That night, as he lay under a bridge wrapped in a thin blanket, he dreamed of a better life. A life where he could help others the way Clara had helped him. Little did either of them know, this daily routine would set off a chain reaction that would change both their lives forever. Clara's kindness became a lifeline for Ethan, not just in terms of food, but in restoring his belief in himself. Her daily visits gave him something to look forward to, a reminder that he wasn't invisible. Slowly, Ethan began to dream again. Dreams of escaping the streets and building a life where he could make a difference. One day, as Clara handed him a sandwich, she noticed a worn-out library book tucked under his arm. "You like reading?" she asked curiously. Ethan nodded, a hint of pride in his voice. "Yeah, it helps me forget stuff." "Have you thought about going back to school?" Clara asked carefully, not wanting to overstep. Ethan laughed bitterly. "School? I barely survived middle school before all this. Besides, who's gonna pay for it?" Clara didn't have an answer, but her question planted another seed in Ethan's mind. That night, he wandered into the local library, drawn by the memory of Clara's words. The librarian, noticing his interest, told him about free tutoring programs and community resources for people in need. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to hope. With Clara's encouragement, he started attending evening classes at a nearby community center. At first, it was hard. He struggled with basic math and grammar, skills he'd missed while living on the streets. But he refused to give up. Every setback reminded him of how far he'd come and how much farther he wanted to go. Meanwhile, life moved on for Clara. As she grew older, her family traveled more frequently, and their paths eventually diverged. Ethan stopped seeing her at the park, though he never forgot her kindness. Years passed, and Clara went off to college, pursuing a degree in art history, while Ethan worked tirelessly to escape homelessness. He took odd jobs during the day, washing dishes, cleaning offices, and studied late into the night, determined to turn his dreams into reality. His hard work paid off when he earned a full scholarship to a state university. On his first day of class, Ethan sat nervously among students who seemed worlds apart from him. Yet every time self-doubt crept in, he remembered Clara's unwavering faith in humanity. She had believed in him when no one else did, including himself. In college, Ethan discovered his passion for medicine. Volunteering at a free clinic opened his eyes to the power of healing. Not just physically, but emotionally. He saw himself in many of the patients, people struggling against circumstances beyond their control. Each interaction reinforced his resolve to become a doctor, to save lives the way Clara had saved his. By the time Ethan graduated medical school, he was unrecognizable from the boy who once sat on that park bench. Gone were the tattered clothes and hollow cheeks. In their place stood a confident young man with a stethoscope around his neck and a heart full of gratitude. Yet through it all, Ethan never forgot Clara. Her simple act of feeding him hadn't just sustained him, it had inspired him to dream bigger than he ever thought possible. Though they had lost touch years ago, Ethan often wondered what had become of her. Was she still as kind-hearted as she'd been back then? Did she ever think about him? As fate would have it, their paths were destined to cross again, in a way neither of them could have imagined. Years later, Clara Whitmore was living a life she had once dreamed of. A successful artist with her own gallery, she traveled the world showcasing her work and advocating for social causes close to her heart. Yet despite her achievements, something felt missing, a lingering sense of purpose that no amount of success could fill. One evening, after returning from an exhibition in Paris, Clara began feeling unwell. At first, she dismissed it as exhaustion, but the symptoms worsened. Sharp pains in her chest, fatigue, and shortness of breath. Her family insisted she see a doctor, and after a battery of tests, the diagnosis came back: a rare congenital heart condition requiring immediate surgery. The news hit Clara like a freight train. She'd always been healthy, invincible even. The thought of lying on an operating table and trusting her life to strangers terrified her. "It's risky," her cardiologist explained gently, "but we've consulted some of the best surgeons in the country. One of them will be leading your case." Clara nodded numbly, trying to process everything. For days, fear consumed her. What if something went wrong? What if this was the end? On the morning of her pre-op appointment, Clara met her surgical team for the first time. As they introduced themselves, one name caught her attention: Dr. Ethan Carter. "Ethan?" she whispered, the name stirring a faint memory. "Yes, Dr. Carter will be your lead surgeon," the nurse confirmed. When Ethan walked into the room, Clara froze. Though he looked nothing like the boy she remembered, his eyes were unmistakable. The same ones that had stared back at her all those years ago in the park. "Clara?" Ethan said softly, equally stunned. For a moment, neither spoke. Memories flooded back. The sandwiches, the quiet conversations, the hope she'd unknowingly given him. I can't believe it's you," Clara finally managed, tears welling up in her eyes. "Neither can I," Ethan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life once. Now it's my turn to save yours." As the initial shock wore off, reality set in. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a high-stakes situation. Clara's surgery was complex, and the pressure on Ethan was immense. Could he remain objective when the patient was someone who had changed the course of his life? Ethical concerns weighed heavily on him. Should he step aside and let another surgeon take over? But deep down, Ethan knew he couldn't walk away. Saving Clara wasn't just about repaying her kindness. It was about honoring the compassion that had shaped him into the person and doctor he was today. "I'll do everything I can," Ethan promised, gripping her hand firmly. "You won't be alone through this." Clara nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude. In that moment, she realized how profoundly her small act of kindness had come full circle. The boy she'd fed every day in the park was now the man holding her life in his hands. As Ethan left the room to prepare for the surgery, Clara closed her eyes, clinging to hope. No matter what happened next, she knew one thing for certain. Their lives were forever intertwined, not by chance, but by the ripple effects of kindness. The days leading up to Clara's surgery were a blur of emotions for both her and Ethan. For Clara, the fear of the unknown loomed large, but there was also an undeniable sense of trust. How could she not believe in the man who had once been a boy sitting on that park bench, sustained by her sandwiches? For Ethan, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't just another surgery. It was a chance to repay the kindness that had saved him years ago. On the morning of the procedure, Ethan stood outside the operating room, reviewing Clara's charts one last time. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages, not because he doubted his skills, but because of the enormity of what was at stake. He thought back to those afternoons in the park, the way Clara's smile had lit up even the darkest corners of his world. "You ready?" asked Dr. Patel, the senior surgeon assisting him. Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "As ready as I'll ever be." Inside the operating room, Clara lay unconscious, her fragile body hooked up to monitors and machines. As Ethan scrubbed in, memories flooded his mind. Her voice asking why he deserved kindness, her laughter as they shared chips on the park bench, her unwavering belief in humanity even when the world seemed cruel. "I won't let you down," Ethan whispered under his breath as he stepped up to the table. The surgery was grueling. Hours passed in tense silence as Ethan and his team worked meticulously to repair Clara's damaged heart. Every incision, every stitch carried the weight of their shared history. At one point, complications arose. A bleed threatened to derail the entire procedure, but Ethan remained calm, drawing on years of training and the resilience instilled in him by Clara's early example. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the surgery was complete. Ethan exhaled deeply, allowing himself a brief moment of relief. It wasn't over yet. Clara still had to wake up and recover, but they'd crossed the hardest hurdle. When Clara finally opened her eyes in the recovery room, the first face she saw was Ethan's. He stood beside her bed, wearing a weary but triumphant smile. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. "Like I've been run over by a truck," Clara joked weakly, managing a small grin. "But alive." "Thank you, Ethan." Ethan shook his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "No, thank you. None of this would have been possible without you. You gave me hope when I had none. Today, I'm just returning the favor." Clara reached out, gripping his hand weakly. "I didn't do anything special. Just fed a hungry boy." "That's exactly what made all the difference," Ethan replied firmly. "Kindness doesn't have to be grand to change someone's life. Yours changed mine." In that moment, surrounded by the hum of hospital machines and the quiet presence of nurses checking vitals, they shared an unspoken understanding. Their lives had come full circle, not through wealth or fame, but through simple acts of compassion that had grown into something extraordinary. For Clara, waking up meant more than surviving. It was a reminder of the impact one person can have on another. For Ethan, saving her life wasn't just about skill. It was about honoring the humanity that connected them. And though neither knew what the future held, they both understood one thing. Their bond would endure, forged by kindness and sealed by gratitude. The days following Clara's surgery were critical. While the procedure had been a success, her recovery was far from guaranteed. Complications could still arise, and Ethan remained by her side, monitoring her progress closely. To him, this wasn't just about medicine, it was personal. Every beep of the heart monitor, every rise and fall of her chest, felt like a testament to the journey they'd shared. Clara's family arrived at the hospital, their faces etched with worry but also gratitude. When they learned that Dr. Carter, the man who had saved her life, was the same boy she'd once helped, they were overwhelmed. "She told us about you," Clara's mother said to Ethan one evening, tears streaming down her face. "She used to come home talking about the boy in the park. We never imagined." "Well, none of this." Ethan nodded, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Your daughter changed my life. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for her." As Clara regained strength, snippets of memory began returning to her. She remembered fragments of the surgery, the distant hum of voices, the sensation of being pulled back from the brink. and each time she woke, Ethan was there. "Why are you still here?" she teased weakly during one visit. "Don't you have other patients to save?" "You're not just another patient," Ethan replied with a soft smile. "You're the reason I became a doctor." Clara blinked, taken aback. "Me?" "Yes, you," Ethan said firmly. "Do you remember those afternoons in the park? You didn't just feed me, you showed me what kindness looks like. You made me believe I mattered, even when I didn't think I did. That belief carried me through everything. School, medical training, all of it. So no, I'm not leaving until I know you're okay." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she processed his words. For years, she'd thought of those moments as small, insignificant gestures, just something anyone would do. But now, she saw how profoundly they had shaped Ethan's life. "I had no idea," she whispered. "I just wanted to help." "And you did?" Ethan said, his voice thick with gratitude. "More than you'll ever know." By the end of the week, Clara was stable enough to begin physical therapy. Each step forward felt monumental, not just because of the physical toll the surgery had taken, but because of the emotional weight of what she'd been through. Yet every challenge was met with determination, fueled by the knowledge that she wasn't alone. Ethan continued visiting her daily, checking on her progress and sharing stories of his journey. From the library books she'd unknowingly inspired him to read, to the late nights studying anatomy while working multiple jobs. His resilience amazed Clara, but more than that, it reminded her of the power of compassion. One afternoon, as they sat together in her hospital room, Clara turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Ethan smiled, glancing out the window where sunlight streamed in. "Now we keep going. You've got your art and I've got my patience. But maybe we find ways to work together. To give back like you taught me." Clara nodded, a spark of inspiration lighting up her eyes. "A partnership for good?" "Exactly," Ethan said, his smile widening. "Kindness creates ripples, Clara. Yours brought us here. Let's see how far they can go." In that moment, surrounded by hope and healing, they both realized something profound. Their connection wasn't just about saving lives. It was about creating a legacy of compassion that would touch countless others. And though neither knew exactly what the future held, one thing was certain. Their bond would continue to inspire acts of kindness for years to come. Months later, Clara stood on a stage in front of hundreds of people at a charity gala hosted by the hospital where Ethan worked. The event celebrated stories of resilience and kindness, how small acts could spark monumental change. As she looked out at the sea of faces, Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude. What had started as a simple gesture years ago had grown into something far greater than she ever imagined. Ethan sat in the front row, smiling proudly as he watched her deliver her speech. "When I first met Ethan," Clara began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "I didn't think much of what I was doing. Bringing him food every day seemed so small, just something anyone would do. But what I didn't realize was that kindness doesn't have to be grand to make an impact. Sometimes, the smallest gestures plant seeds that grow into something extraordinary." The audience erupted into applause, many wiping away tears. For Clara, this moment wasn't about recognition. It was about reminding everyone present that they, too, had the power to make a difference. After the ceremony, Ethan approached her with a proud grin. "You've inspired so many people tonight," he said softly. "Including me." Clara shook her head, humbled. "No, Ethan. You're the one who inspires me. Look at everything you've accomplished. You've dedicated your life to helping others, just like I tried to help you." "It's because of you," Ethan replied firmly. "You showed me what compassion looks like. Now it's my turn to keep that circle going." Their bond had become unbreakable over the months since Clara's surgery, a testament to how kindness creates lasting connections. Together, they launched a foundation called Threads of Hope, aimed at supporting homeless youth and providing scholarships for underprivileged students pursuing careers in healthcare. Through it all, Clara never forgot the lesson she'd learned that fateful day in the park. One act of kindness could spark a chain reaction of positive change. Her simple decision to feed a hungry boy, had not only saved a life but also ignited a movement that touched thousands. One evening, as Clara walked home under the same stars that had witnessed her struggles years ago, she reflected on how far she'd come. Her journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge had shaped her into the person she was today. And through it all, she'd learned one undeniable truth. Kindness always finds its way back to you. As she tucked herself into bed that night, Clara realized something profound. Her legacy wasn't just about what she'd done. It was about inspiring others to do the same. And so, the ripple of compassion continued, spreading outward and touching hearts across generations. One selfless act had sparked a legacy, one that would endure long after Clara and Ethan were gone. If this story inspired you, don't forget to share it with friends and family. Let us know in the comments, what's the kindest thing you've ever done? Your stories inspire us to keep creating tales that matter.